Today is Senator Miriam Santiago. She will share with us her views on the proposal for a truth commission, a proposal coming nonetheless from Malacanang itself. We'll also discuss the impeachment complaint being prepared by the opposition, as well as Senator Lacson's SONA, that's true State of the Nation, in his words this morning. We'll also talk about possible realignments in the Senate. Good afternoon, Senators.
Hello, David and Karina.
All right, let's begin with the proposal to form a truth commission. You've come out openly against it, both from a legal point of view and from a tactical point of view. It's unnecessary. But nevertheless, what do you think was going through the minds of the President and her advisors? Was it to appease the Catholic bishops? Or do you think Malacanang, or do you think the President herself, since you know her quite personally, believes that this is the best way to clear the air? Given that an impeachment trial, being a political trial as you put it, may not necessarily be as independent or as sober as many would expect it to be.
The President was reacting to the proposal of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines to follow a procedure where the first step would be a truth commission and impeachment would only be a second step. She wanted to show that she was open-minded about the procedure for coming out with the truth about the so-called wiretapped tapes. But on closer look, I think even Malacanang must be entertaining serious doubts about the validity of a mere administrative order establishing a commission that will give it extraordinary powers that are normally the exclusive preserve of Congress to bestow. You see, the President by herself does not have legislative power. She merely exercises legislative power by the issuance of an executive order or an administrative order when there is a law passed by Congress which gives her that power, or which at least implies that she has that power in order to properly implement a law passed by the legislature. So the President has this normal, routine, day-to-day power, a quotidian power that is exercised on a daily basis, because the basis is the administrative code, which implies those powers, but the administrative code was first passed and promulgated by the Congress. In this case, Congress has never passed a law about a truth commission or about an independent counsel, and so there is no legal basis. I am afraid that if President Arroyo issues an administrative order establishing the truth commission, one of her opponents might run to the Supreme Court, and that administrative order would be constitutionally vulnerable to attack.
Unless, of course, the proposal being entertained by Malacanang is to create some sort of fact-finding commission. Because when we talk about truth commission, we're talking about the South African model, there's the El Salvadorian model, but of course, the crimes in those cases were of course, genocide or apartheid. In the case of the Philippine context, it's about election fraud. Nevertheless, there are those who are saying that why not like a Davide Commission or something like the Feliciano Commission, which is a fact-finding board to look into establishing what the facts were regarding the accusations.
If the prototype for the submission of the CBCP about a truth commission is the South African model, what they had was a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or a TRC, which was based on a law passed by the South African government. It was called the National Promotion of Unity and Reconciliation. So there was a law. And we cannot use that as a model because that was meant to address three issues in connection with the apartheid government, which had just gone out of power and was being replaced by a black government headed by President Mandela. The three issues were human rights violations, amnesty, reparation, and rehabilitation.
Clearly, our context is very
completely different, had nothing to do with impeachment at all. But in any event, setting aside the South African model, if you look at the American prototype, which I presume is the United States Independent Counsel Act, which was passed in 1994 but was recently amended, virtually overhauled in 2004, you'll see that the Independent Counsel has power to conduct a preliminary investigation of facts that might lead to an impeachment, and he possesses the power to subpoena witnesses, the power to cite for contempt of court. These are powers that cannot be unilaterally claimed by a president unless there is a law passed by Congress on which she can base her action.
So if any body were to be created, it would be a useless body.
That is right. It would not have sufficient power to compel people to come and testify, and if people told lies, it cannot even punish them for it. So it would become virtually a redundancy. It would be performing functions that in the first place it is not sure of controlling, and in the second place functions which have already been in our jurisdiction carried out by the joint House committees that investigated the wiretap tapes, and by the joint Senate committees that are even now still in the process of investigating alleged illegal vetting. So why do we need a truth commission since we have already seen agencies on TV discharging the functions of investigation and possible prosecution?
So the only way it would be credible and legal were for Congress itself to pass a law creating such a commission. And
even the defect finding commission, if memory serves right, was later on validated by a law subsequently passed by Congress, because when it had already been organized, suddenly they discovered that they did not have any legal basis for giving Mr. Davide and his colleagues in that commission the power to subpoena, the power to cite for contempt, and so they had to run to Congress, and Congress obliged.
And realistically speaking, Congress, if it were to even deliberate on such a law, would not pass it because the way things are going right now, it's the impeachment. Congress is looking at the impeachment as a process.
That's right. Congress will say, all right, what will happen? And I will specifically deal with the House of Representatives because it performs the function of what we call in law preliminary investigation, whereas by contrast the Senate will perform the function of actual trial and judgment on the case. Now, the House of Representatives will ask, suppose that we conduct our duty under the Constitution to conduct a preliminary investigation, and then the so-called Truth Commission comes out with a different finding. Who shall prevail? We shall prevail, the representatives can predictably claim, because we are so named by the Constitution, whereas the Truth Commission is not even mentioned.
What about your thoughts? If and it is possible, it's still possible that if the impeachment complaint is quashed by the majority in the lower house, what about a resurgence of calls to now create a Truth Commission?
But that
using Congress as
you are in effect, therefore, opening a window toward a veto of the action of the House of Representatives. And on what basis? Either in the Constitution or in any law. You will not be able to find one if that is brought under attack in the Supreme Court.
Because the political problem I foresee is if, for example, the impeachment complaint is quashed, it fails in the lower house, it never reaches the Senate, there is no trial, and you'll have these sectors saying, well, where is the truth? We never found out the truth because the politicians came into the picture and voted as a majority. Would you expect the kind of pressure to re-emerge for in the absence of an impeachment process, a Truth Commission?
No, I don't think so. In the first place, if we look at history, in the South African model, their Truth and Reconciliation Commission was subjected to adverse criticism after it had released its findings because its critics claimed that the TRC in South Africa had sacrificed justice for truth. And that kind of criticism will surely emerge if a Truth Commission is established, even after the House has already quashed the impeachment complaint.
So there should be closure after the impeachment.
There would in effect be double jeopardy, as the lawyers say.
So there should be closure after the impeachment.
That's right.
Whether you agree or not with the decision, there should be closure.
That's what the Constitution contemplated.
So not only is it the pragmatic way or the most pragmatic approach to it, but the legal way as well, and that is to go through an impeachment process. But having said that and having heard your explanation, why do you think Malacanang has said in the past days that with or without Congress's approval, they will issue that EO creating the Truth Commission?
Is that bravado, or is that, you think there's...
That's whistling in the dark, you know. They do not want to reject the proposal outright out of respect for its source, the CBCP. These are some of the best Catholic minds in the country, and some of them are trained in the law. So you cannot just summarily dismiss a proposal from them. At the very least, you should say you will give it serious thought or grave consideration, and I think that that is another way, that is the Malacanang way of showing it.
Some say, though, that this is Malacanang's way of going through a shortcut, because they're saying that they've weighed the pros and cons, and more damage will be done if you go through an impeachment trial as compared to going to a Truth Commission. Your thoughts on that, Senator?
I don't really know which one is the worst case scenario for an embattled president, I think it's very hard to make that kind of a weighing assessment at this time, because we've never had any experience with a truth commission before an impeachment complaint is formally lodged in the House, as the Constitution provides. So this is all speculative.
Right, your thoughts on the impeachment process now. Let's move away from the Truth Commission and let's go to the impeachment process. As it turns out, the minority is going to be, well, submitting.
First thing Monday morning.
First thing Monday morning, the articles of impeachment. It turns out that it's going to go beyond just the allegations of cheating. We're now looking at charges of corruption, charges of. We don't have the actual text of that, but what we're hearing from interviews is that it will include cases such as the Macapagal Highway, so on and so forth. This is going to be a long, drawn-out process if that were true. 10 charges all in all.
Well, in that case, this is a shotgun approach. You file as many cases as you want, even only to harass the
You only need one,
respondent.
be successful in one to impeach a president.
That's right. And this is all allowed by the Constitution, because the grounds provided by the Constitution for impeachment are culpable violation of the Constitution, high crimes, which can include anything. The question of what is an impeachable offense is still open-ended, even in the United States, from whom we copied this procedure. And so they can put in as many charges as they want, but it will delay the impeachment process, because each one will have to be given its time, its day in court. All of these complaints will go to the Judicial Committee of the House of Representatives, and they'll have to conduct hearings there and then submit a report to the House in plenary session.
It begs the question, if the evidence were so strong with regard to the of fraud in the election, that would be enough. If there were evidence, that would be enough to impeach the president on that count alone.
Well,
Why go through 9 other charges?
You know, there's a legal conundrum involved here. When somebody suspects that the president has stolen or cheated in the elections, then that person must file a protest with the Presidential Electoral Tribunal, and there is a deadline for filing this protest. Now, query, as the lawyers love to say, query, even after the deadline set by the Presidential Electoral Tribunal, can the question of electoral fraud still be brought up in a subsequent impeachment proceeding after the deadline has lapsed? Because normally, only the first 2 runner-ups to the winning president are allowed to file the protest, and only within a certain period of time. Now, would there be room to argue that even though the 2 runner-ups have, let's say, waived the right to file a protest, anyone can file a protest on the same ground of election fraud? So they will first have to dispose of this threshold question, because before they can even address the issue itself.
Maybe that's why they put in the 9 other charges, not concentrate
It's a legal
on
strategy.
Yes,
if only the Presidential Electoral Tribunal is mandated to tackle charges of election fraud, then they will have to move on to another charge.
Right. Now, the deliberate conception is that impeachment of a sitting president should not be confined to the judicial sphere of jurisdiction, but should be given to the representatives of the people sitting as a quasi-judicial agency. So necessarily, by this very structure, the law or the Constitution intends that the proceedings will not be strictly judicial. Then you will have all kinds of comments from people who are not familiar with the rules of court or with legal procedure, or who have never studied any of the laws involved. And that will necessarily create confusion in the public mind, because their opinions will certainly influence at least a certain sector of the viewing public or the listening public, as the case may be. And it could be that the opinions expressed by lay people might not be exactly accurate with respect to the rules of evidence.
In effect, this could be trial by publicity rather than
yes.
And having said that, Senator, learning from the lessons of the past, do you think that just in case an impeachment trial prospers, that it should be once again televised?
you know, there is what the authorities call a classic handbook on impeachment. It's called Impeachment by Charles Black Jr. And Dr. Black is so highly regarded that normally any discussion of impeachment in legal circles will begin with his little book. And he says in his book that there should be a gag rule on media during impeachment trial, because he says the moment that media observes the process will become distorted instantaneously. And also, he points to the possible problem that might be raised if, let us say, not exactly legal arguments are raised by people who are being interviewed or who are being observed by the TV cameras.
Is that tantamount to saying that you subscribe to that idea and you don't want the
Well, I am sympathetic to it. I don't know if politicians will want to be barred from the media, since everyone will want to have his 5 cent hours worth immortalized on videotape. So I guess there will be a disregard for Professor Black's advice, and there's nothing we can do about it.
We're speaking about the possibility it would actually reach the Senate.
So let's talk about the realignment.
Let's talk about the Senate itself, because then again, the President's allies in the Senate would be very critical. This is a political trial after all.
Right.
And numbers, more often than not, are just as important as the facts.
Whoop, red light.
Okay.
Stop. Yes, you would expect that the senators might initially act on partisan lines. They'd follow party leaders. But the moment that the evidence begins to whip up public opinion to such an extent that the senator or the congressman feels that he must go with the flow or follow the mainstream or go on the loop, that is to say,
then party loyalties
become
disappear.
Populist.
Okay.
Yes. His loyalty to the president and to his party ends when his own re-election chances are already in the forefront. Suppose he says, I'm an administration senator. I will support the president, and I will vote with my colleagues in the administration to see to it that the proceedings will be slanted in favor of the president. But suppose that in the course of the presentation of evidence during the impeachment trial, public opinion is such that he can feel, that the senator can feel that in his constituency or bailiwicks, but this is even more true in the case of congressmen, because they have districts. Every time he goes to his district, he can sense the public pulse going against the president. At a certain point, that congressman will turn his back on the party system when his own political survival is at stake. So you cannot really make the simplistic arithmetical equation.
So nothing is predictable.
That is correct.
A lot of weird things have happened.
The wild card here will be public opinion. Now, speaking of the Senate on Monday, of course, it's been written about. I'm sure you've had your chance to answer this question. Are you interested in a Senate presidency?
No.
Because it would really be awkward for Senator Frank Trilon to remain as president of the Senate without really speaking for the majority, so to speak.
That's right, yes. I agree with your analysis. Now, insofar as my own personality is concerned, you know, to become Senate President, you don't have to be #1 in your class. You don't have to be the smartest. You just have to be the person who has the least number of enemies. Now, this is an untenable situation for a person who holds such strong convictions that she is likely to ruffle the feathers of those who don't agree with her viewpoint. Particularly a person like me who is willing to fight for what she believes in. I am going to raise the hackles of many people, and so therefore I cannot be expected to go from senator to senator, all 22 of them, since there are 23 of us, begging and pleading, will you please vote for me?
Right. It's been written about, though, and please clarify that for us, that you were able to speak, or at least you're being friends now with Senator Loy Ejercito and also Senator Jingoy Estrada.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Win them to your side because you still want that Senate presidency seat.
Oh, I want the Senate presidency. No, as an administration senator, I wanted to find out where the opposition vote would go. Well, in the first place, there is no such thing as an opposition vote. And in the second place, they feel that they should have individual freedom to choose whom to vote for at this point. So there is no raison d'etre, there is no reason for computing a so-called opposition vote, since there is no such thing at this point.
So is it going to be a status quo on Monday?
It could be possible, simply because of the committee system in the Senate as well as in the House. The way to become Senate President is to go from senator to senator, offering a chairmanship of a certain committee. If the senator likes it, he will say he will vote for the contender. Then the contender moves on. But if he doesn't like it, then the contender will have to talk to other senators he has already talked to see if he can accommodate the desired chairmanship of the person he's talking to at the moment. So this is very time-consuming.
If it is status quo on Monday, that doesn't solve the awkward position of the Senate President and the majority floor leader, who are now no longer with the majority party.
He will always be a jittery Senate President because he would not have a firm block of votes to rely on. I would say, on the request of media, I have tried to compute, but of course, my calculations cannot possibly be 100% accurate. I think that the Drilon block would have about 6 votes, the Villar block about 5, and the Estrada block at least 3. So there would be at least 3 blocks, and as you can see, because of the arithmetic involved, not one block has the power to dominate the question of who will be the Senate President, the incumbent or somebody new. It will have to go seek the support of another block. And that automatically excludes me because I am a block all by my lonesome.
Do you think, though, Senator, that it's pragmatic for us to have this status quo, or for the senators to have this status quo, given that there is an impending impeachment trial, in case?
We may not like it, but politics is not about what ought to be, but what actually is. That's the way they operate. Or maybe my colleagues and I operate.
So we may never see realignments really happening at the Senate.
You have to gather enough support from malcontents, senators who have no chairmanships or who are chairs of committees they don't like and want to exchange for something more powerful or influential. Basically, it's a question of haggling, log rolling. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Okay, just a quick question, David, because we're just counting days before the State of the Nation address. Madam Senator, can you please tell us quick expectations on the part from the President's speech on Monday? Do you want to hear? What do you think she'll say?
She will stand firm that she will not resign. She will say that she will cooperate with the impeachment process and that she wants to arrive at the truth as much as those who hate her.
All right. Thank you so much. We're speaking to Senator Miriam Santiago. Good luck on Monday, ma'am.
Thank you.
And